Good morning. I'm Dante Ang, the President and CEO of the Manila Times. We're pleased to have this morning the Ambassador of Denmark in the Philippines, Ambassador Grete Sillasen. Ambassador Sillasen has dedicated her career to international relations with 3 postings for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. She has been with the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs since 1994 and has held various senior positions in Copenhagen and abroad. So prior to her posting here in Manila, she was ambassador to Argentina, where she was also the non-resident ambassador to Paraguay and Uruguay. Ambassador Sillasen holds a master's degree in law, and she is married to another ambassador, Ambassador Kim Christensen, who is currently the Danish ambassador to Vietnam and Laos. It must be nice to have your husband at least in the same continent, Ambassador. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, and that was definitely also part of the plan. My husband was the ambassador to Brazil when I was in Argentina. And then the plan was that we would have the same kind of setup here. The children have always been with me. Now it's only 2 daughters. My son is studying in Copenhagen. But we can say that COVID changed that because we can't travel. We don't see each other. I mean, we are so close and yet so far.
So close and yet so far.
Yes. So yeah. But I mean, we have these means, like we can do an interview now. In normal situations, you and I would have been sitting in the same room. And here we are, but that's also what it teaches us. But exactly when it comes to family relations, Skype does not quite compensate, I have to say.
Well, yeah, we have to do what we can. Ambassador, yes. Thank you for your time today. I'm joined this morning by our maritime editor, Carmela Hular, and 2 of our reporters, Keith Kalayag, who covers Malacanang, and Say Almasan, who covers business beats, including the Stock Exchange and the Department of Tourism. But before we ask questions, would you mind giving us a brief overview of Philippine-Denmark relations? Where are we at now? Things have changed so much. Maybe you can bring us up to date on how that relations is at this moment.
Definitely, and I think I should start out by saying that this year we can celebrate 75 years of diplomatic relations between our 2 countries. Denmark was among the first countries to acknowledge the independence of the Philippines. So we are very happy that we have this year. We have to say also that, of course, activities have been greatly hampered by the COVID because we cannot do anything physically. So we are down to a shifting calendar and some online events. We are doing this in very close cooperation with the Philippine Embassy in Copenhagen. The Philippines opened its embassy in Copenhagen just 2 years ago. And I have a very close cooperation with Ambassador Leo Herrera Lim. So we do our best, both on a day-to-day basis and also if we have special events. For example, we are looking forward to hosting together a meeting with businesses later this year. So because it's a 2-way communication and it's a win-win situation if we can strengthen our ties in any ways, in all ways, also the commercials. Maybe just historically, Denmark has always had an important merchant fleet. We have these days with a container shipment, but also going back. So in the 17th century, Danish ships would actually be calling on the ports in the Philippines. We had a foothold in India, in Trankaba, and that was used also. So we were calling on each other already back then. Then one feature that I would actually like to share, I don't know if you can sort of envisage the map of Denmark, but we are both archipelagos, your country and my country. Of course, the Philippines is much bigger with your 7,000 plus islands and we have 400 plus. But it's interesting how much we have in common when we have that physical layout, because we understand each other's, the complications of getting to the furthest away parts of your country, the infrastructure challenges that it takes. And that's also why, for example, Danish infrastructure companies are very well situated to everything that has to do with ports, bridges, and so forth. So we share that, and we share that challenge, which is for better. I think there's much nice to be said about it, but also we know what climate change, what impact that has. We don't have typhoons the way you do, but we feel the impact of the climate change, and we have low-lying islands, and the concerns that you have, we have. And therefore, climate change and what we can do to remedy it and to prevent it getting much worse is something that is very much on our agenda, and that's something that has been on the agenda of Denmark basically back since the 70s, because we did like any other country. We developed rapidly, we became hugely dependent on oil. And then in the 70s, we suffered what we refer to as the oil crisis due to global developments. We were caught in a situation where suddenly in the winter of 73, there was no oil or very limited amounts of oil. So what to do? Introducing car-free Sundays, lowering the temperatures in houses. That's not your problem, but then to cut out the aircon. And that was a lesson. And it was a wake-up call for Denmark to say we cannot be reliant on imported fuels alone. Plus, we started really to see the impact of too much use of the black energy. We had the ecological problems. So it was at these two things started driving us in the direction of a sustainable and green development. And for example, the Danish windmills coming from the Danish company Vestas, it's the biggest windmill producing company in the world. And that started out with a necessity. They seized the moment, and today it's a global industry. They actually put up the first windmill park in the Philippines, has Vestas windmills in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are those the new ones in Rizal, or are there elsewhere? Where are they located in
they are, and maybe Christina can help me with the exact name of the location, but it's here in Luzon.
Yes, it's the one in Ilocos.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yes. Okay. Oh, that's news to me. All the while I was thinking it was a British company, but it's Danish.
Well, it's a Danish. The consortium that put it up could be British, but the windmills are Danish.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yes.
Well, I know they're not only contributing to our energy supply, but they're also a tourist attraction in
And of course, in Denmark, I mean, you cannot go anywhere without seeing windmills, and we have some of the world's largest offshore wind parks also. And actually, when you touch down at the airport in Copenhagen, the first thing you see, depending on which angle you get to the airport from, but then we have offshore windmills also outside, right outside Copenhagen. So it is, as you say, it becomes an attraction in itself also. And that is also what has happened to Copenhagen, because at the same time, more or less, that we started considering the energy that we are using, those were the years also where decisions were made that we cannot keep going in the same direction with urban development, because we had exactly what all other cities have, too many cars, congestion, pollution, all the nice old medieval squares filled up by cars, all these things. And it took some very visionary urban planners, and I could call him out by name, Mr. Jan Gehl, who is a Danish architect, who was the first sort of to say, how do we make cities for people? And it took a lot of statistics, which we are very strong at in Denmark. We have everything into statistics. And with the statistics and with the political support, and very importantly, with the support of the citizens of Copenhagen, a turnaround was started. So when Copenhagen today keeps coming out on top of the list of the most livable cities in the world, and by the way, the best city for bikers and pedestrians, it's a result of a very long process where decisions were made to turn around. It doesn't come just like this. And sometimes people tell me, well, you lucky people, but it's a long process. And it has not been a process without backs and forths, because in the beginning, everybody who drives a car will say, but hey, I need my car. And so you need to bring everybody together to see that it's necessary. But Mr. Gale has just given last year and this year 2 lectures, online lectures with 2 universities here in the Philippines. On his ideas on sustainable development and how you develop cities for people. He's amazing.
Please give us a link to that. I think we'd be very interested in if it's available. We'd be
definitely. The latest lecture was with University Santo Tomas, and there are some articles about it also. But we would be very happy and also to link to this. Maybe we can look into interviews or something like this.
Sure.
He's really the grand old man of urban planning. And if you look at Times Square, which today is a pedestrian zone, that was him. Yes. So it's really globally that he and his architecture company have been helping big and small cities to change their ways. And when I was in Buenos Aires, which is another mega city, there was a cooperation between Gale Architects and the city of Buenos Aires, and interestingly, also developing the urban slum areas. How do you do that? How do you avoid just demolishing everything and then try to put so many thousand people somewhere else, very, very far away from the city center where they live and work, or where they have their jobs?
That's our problem. That's precisely our problem now.
Exactly. So they are very visionary, and they have made a difference. And he has published a number of books, and one of them is his City for People. And I think this month it's coming out in its 38th language.
Wow.
So
is your embassy working with our government on climate change cooperation and or maybe capacity building in terms of urban planning? Are those things that your embassy is involved with right now? I mean, sounds like we could use a lot of these things in the Philippines.
It's something that we are. Let me say it like this: we are starting to take up that challenge also, because COVID has shown us how much that is necessary. The embassy here is relatively young. It came in 2014. Yes. So it always takes some time also to get everything established and to continue with that. But for example, right now there are what is called energy transition dialogues leading up to the COP26. And it's the United Kingdom that is heading all of it. But we are involved in that process, and we are spearheading the working group on energy efficiency. And we had, I met with the Secretary for Transportation when that was still possible. You know, we had this little window of actually meeting people. Was it 1 month and a half that we thought that we were going back to normal? But that was also about sustainable transportation and planning exactly also because when you make ports or even your ferry boats, you can make sure that all these things are sustainable. So we are heading in that direction in everything we are doing. Sustainable development goals, the energy efficiency. It's all sort of the header of what we are doing, representing the government of Denmark, but also Danish companies. They can either be experts in the field. So we have companies providing, for example, excellent water pumps. 10% of the energy that we use in the world is used above surface pumping water. So the better your pumps are, the more energy efficient you are, and you only use the amount of water that you need. It's about controlling temperatures, for example. It's energy efficiency is very, very important in the sense that it's not that renewable energy is very important, and I think we have all seen that we have to turn away from how much oil and gas we are using towards the renewable energy sources. And it's very visible. You would remember that you have seen the windmill parks, right? It comes to your mind. Energy efficiency is invisible. but it's just as important. It doesn't show, because your company can put up, a company can put up solar panels and it's visible that they are doing something. But if they know how to control the use of energy, so it's not only about what type of energy that you're using, it's also about how much you're using. And as we say, the cleanest and cheapest and most reliable energy is the energy that you don't use.
Right.
So we have a lot of companies that specialize in how you get there, and then most Danish companies already apply that in the way that they work. Right.
Interesting.
So yes.
The critics who are when they talk about green energy or renewable energy, one of the issues they bring up is the base load issue, and then that maybe renewable energy sources are just not reliable to supply the base load energy requirements. How did Denmark resolve that issue? What is your energy mix like?
It is correct that it is one of the challenges. So it's not only about that you put up some windmills; it's how you get it into the grid, and so that it's reliable. And of course, because the wind can be fickle, sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. So it's also about, and without being a technician myself, but we have solved that problem. And that's one of the things that we have done, is that our grid is completely reliable. And we can phase in different types of energy. So on days where the winds are high, then we run on wind energy. I think it's 3 or 4 years ago, on the 24th of December, which is a day where we use a lot of energy because we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. So that means all the ovens with the traditional Christmas food are running. And by the way, we are heating the houses because it's December and it's cold. And it was a very windy 24th of December. And all of Denmark was running on the wind energy for that evening. Otherwise, we are also very well connected with our neighbors, Norway and Sweden, that produce energy from water. So we can switch on to their energy, and then we buy from them on days where we don't produce enough. And of course, we are not completely green yet. We also, in the first place, we are, although small, oil-producing company. We have some oil in the North Sea, but Norway has much more, as everybody would know. The way the line was drawn, the oil went to Norway, but that is being phased out also.
I see.
Yes.
Interesting. Are there, do you think, renewable energy companies in Denmark that may be interested in investing here in the Philippines? Given there's a similarity in our, we're, as you said, both archipelagos, there may be similar technologies or that can be installed here.
Yes.
Are there anyone interested?
Yeah, Danish energy companies are looking. In the first place, we have companies out here already. Some of these companies I have told you about, with the pumps and the thermostats and all this, they are here. Danfoss, Grundfos, these companies, they are here. They are working. So it's up and running. With regard to the energy itself, we have companies that are definitely interested in looking into it. It's of course also very much dependent on the legislation in the country that you want to go into, because for these kind of investments that are big, you need the predictability. You need really the long-term vision of it to make what are big investments and long-term investments. But we see the legislation going in that direction. For example, there is now an act on energy efficiency, which is very important. And we have just also, within the old ministry funds, we have a grant where we can explore further energy efficiency and renewable energies. So that's something that we will be working further on now also.
Let me step back a minute and ask how things are in your country. I noticed that Denmark reopened schools, I believe, last year. How are you able to do that? And what's the situation today in terms of this pandemic? What's the latest?
Yeah, it's been, I mean, for any other country, it has really been going back and forth. Where we are at right now is where we really see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it has been a tunnel for us, like it has for everybody else. But what we have had all along is that we have a very efficient healthcare system. It's public and it's free. And they were able to reorganize very rapidly. So we have not had the situation where we did not have enough hospital beds, for example. Everybody that needed a hospital bed has had a hospital bed. You don't have to pay for the tests that you're taking and so forth. It has stretched our health system to its limits, there's no doubt. And you have had to make new decisions to cater for new situations all the time. So I'm not trying to downplay the magnitude of what has been happening, but it has been handled very well. We are also a very homogeneous country. We are used to both dialogue, but we are a consensus-based decision making, but also that we trust. We have a very high level of trust in Denmark. So there has been a high level of trust in the decisions that have been made. I'm not saying that haven't been critical voices, because it is like that. You have to make decisions, and some of the decisions were maybe not the best, but that is easy to see in hindsight. But we have, it seems now, the virus under control, and very importantly, the vaccination program is progressing very rapidly. Now we have 9.5% fully vaccinated, and we have 20% of the population with the first shot. And the projection is that it goes back and forth a bit, because then there are vaccines that we rule out again because of blood clots and stuff like that. But
like with AstraZeneca, right?
Yeah, exactly. In July we should have everybody vaccinated. And that, of course, means a lot for opening up. And also the figures as they are now, based on that, exactly 2 days ago, big parts of the society opened up again, because we had a terrible second wave. Christmas was bad. I think we did like everybody else. Seems like we have things under control. People were desperate to go out and celebrate Christmas. And although there were still a lot of prohibitions and whatnot in place, it didn't control the issue. And so we had a very bad second wave, but we seem to be avoiding the third wave. And now, as we progress with vaccines, people have really learned the lesson. And now we are opening up again. And then we should have so much herd immunity that we don't have a third wave, but nobody is sure till it's over. That's also the case.
Ambassador, there was some before the pandemic. There were some issues also with the refugees in Europe, not just in your country, but in many places in Europe. Is that still a concern in your country? Is there any work between Denmark and the Philippines, for example, on terrorism cooperation and things like that?
Are you talking about refugees or about terrorism?
Well, both. I mean, because it seems to be somehow linked, right?
Yes. I mean, Denmark is, of course, a country that is very concerned about international terrorism. I think you know that in 2006 we had these famous cartoons, which definitely put us in a position where terrorism came much closer, and we have seen in Europe over the last few years these attacks, and attack was only very, very narrowly avoided in Copenhagen some 5 years ago due to a door that was locked the way it should have been locked. It was a meeting,
right.
And it could have been a disaster and ended up not being it. So it worries us, of course, both with regard to what is Europe, what is the security in Europe, and of course we always work very closely together with our EU allies. We also work very closely I mean, within NATO, we are a member of NATO, so we have also contributed to the troops in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Important contributions, actually, considering the size of our country. We are also contributing to keeping down piracy, Horn of Africa, and now West Africa. Horn of Africa, well, nobody can say it's under control, but things are much better. But then we see it growing in West Africa. I'm very aware of the issues that we have here in the Philippines as well. We are not directly involved here in the Philippines, but we are following this. So whenever there are special meetings about that, all relevant hotspots are also in our consideration, but there's not a direct cooperation on that. But we're definitely aware also, because we know that terrorism is global. The ones that might be trained here could be the ones that came back from Syria. We have people that came back from Syria, or they go there again. So it's a common issue. So wherever there is cooperation on the world's efforts to counter terrorism, we are working. We are cooperating with that also.
Let me bring in some of my colleagues here to ask questions. Maybe I can start with Keith.
Good morning from the Philippines, Ms. Ambassador.
Morning.
Morning. My first question to you is, Philippines is struggling to secure enough vaccines for its population. So I understand Denmark has stopped the use of AstraZeneca vaccines, and the country is now in discussion with other countries over exchanging its shelved AstraZeneca vaccines with other brands. May we know if you also consider donating these vaccines to ally countries, including the Philippines, ma'am? Because here in the Philippines, we allow the use of AstraZeneca. Thank you.
In the first place, the AstraZeneca vaccines of Denmark has been going to the northern part of Germany. We have a very close cooperation because we have a Danish minority in the northern part of Germany, as it has been in all parts of Europe. Boundaries went back and forth according to the many wars that have been fought. And it's only in 1920, last year it was 100 years ago, that our frontier with Germany had found its final position. And as something that could be picked up by other countries. It was done by a referendum. It was after the First World War. And as you know, the Treaty of Versailles was tough on Germany. So basically, Denmark got the offer that we could consider going back to where Denmark used to go to, which was all the way down to Hamburg. If you look at old maps of Denmark, Denmark actually goes almost down to Hamburg. But the wise decision was made that we would have a referendum so that the peoples could decide whether they would go with Germany or whether they wanted to go to Denmark. And the northern part of that piece of land voted for Denmark. They had been Danish till 1864 when we lost that part of the country in a war with Germany. And they still felt that they wanted to go back to Denmark. But the two-thirds, the southern parts, two-thirds of that piece of land voted for Germany, which means that we have a small German minority in Denmark, and we have, and in Germany there's a small Danish minority. And for good neighbor reasons, that is where that vaccine is going in the first place.
All right, I understand, ma'am.
But we are part of the COVAX initiative, so it's not that we are not within the global efforts to distribute vaccines. So it goes to all parts of the world. So we are part of the COVAX.
So what vaccines are available now in Denmark?
Moderna and Pfizer are the ones that are being used now.
I see.
And then they are looking into Johnson & Johnson. And AstraZeneca has been put on hold.
I see. Right.
Ma'am, the Philippines has filed numerous diplomatic protests against China just recently over the deployment of suspected Chinese maritime militia vessels in the West Philippine Sea. Countries have since backed the Philippines, on the sea row. The U.S. for one, they expressed support to the filing of the diplomatic protest. May we know, ma'am, where Denmark stand on the issue? Where do you stand?
Well, the EU, by way of the EU delegation here in the Philippines, made a tweet about it. Most of the comments came out by tweet. But we stand on a rule-based approach to the use of the sea. So we go by the decisions. We follow the rules. We want a rules-based approach to the use of the seas, and that's also, of course, how the seas are being used for commercial purposes, because we know that the largest or the most crowded waters now are actually not the Atlantic as it used to be, but it's between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. So all the straits, and they are narrow, some of them, that can be sailed on, are of course of importance to us also, holding, for example, the world's biggest container company, Maersk, is a Danish company. So of course it's of importance to us.
Right. I wonder, Ambassador, you mentioned earlier the Horn of Africa. I mean, we're both maritime countries. I wonder if that whole issue with the West Philippine Sea is impacting any Danish shipping companies or the Danish economy at all. Is it a concern?
I mean, so far, commercial ships have not been held back from sailing the waters. So at this stage, not in a direct way, but as I say, it's of course something that is of great importance to us. The cooperation that, for example, takes place in IMO, the International Maritime Organization, we are very active there. So we are very active in all the fora, also within the United Nations and so forth, that relates to the sea.
Right. Faye, do you have some questions?
On the recently launched EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, I just want to know what are the specific goals of the strategy and what could this mean for the relations, specifically the business and trade relations between Denmark and the Philippines in the future, and how could this be of aid in the economic growth of both countries? Thank you.
Well, of course, it's very much in the making still, the Indo-Pacific strategy. But of course, it aims directly towards the importance of this whole area, Southeast Asia and beyond, and the interest in our peaceful cooperation, EU, with Asia, which will be to the benefit of our countries and of your countries. We are a small, open economy as a country, Denmark. So we are all for multilateral cooperation. A small country like ours survive not by closing the borders, but by opening the borders and by furthering international cooperation. And that goes also for that initiative, which we wholeheartedly support. And so we do it within the cooperation of EU, and it's very important for us, our membership of the EU. And of course also, hopefully it also has an impact on the bilateral commercial and political relations between specifically our two countries.
I just want to ask Ambassador, what are the embassy's plans that are geared towards stimulating the trade relation between Denmark and the Philippines, and what industries are you looking to specifically boost?
Well, trade relations are of great importance to us. So we have a commercial section within the embassy. And as we were talking about before, I mean, Danish companies, we are active in very many ways of walks of life. So we have a diversified production in Denmark. But there is, and we have some 80 companies that are active here in the Philippines already, and some are producing here. And some are exporting to here, and some are constructing here, if you have like the engineering companies. The largest export articles from Denmark right now are within pharmaceuticals and medicine. But as we talked about, we are very interested in looking into what is sustainable development, what is renewable energies, what is energy efficiency. We have knowledge which is really at the forefront of this field, and it's something that we see expanding in many other countries in Southeast Asia. So Philippines is definitely one of the places where we would like to see that cooperation taking place already. And as I said, we are already in that cooperation, so we want to strengthen it.
Carmela, would you like to ask yes. Your questions?
Yes. Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning.
I'm the Maritime Editor of Manila Times, and I have been a maritime journalist for more than 2 decades now. So this is quite a good chance for me to actually ask a few questions. I don't have the exact number right now, but Denmark is one of the biggest employer of Filipino seafarers for decades. I cannot emphasize this enough. One of the world's biggest company, the Maersk, employs a majority of Filipinos to man their ships globally, taking into account as well the fact that Danish ship owners transport approximately 10% of the global trade. That's how Danish shipping is important to our crewing and manning industry in the Philippines, an industry that remits $7 billion annually to the national coffers. My question is, how has the pandemic impacted the deployment of Filipino seafarers to Danish-owned and managed ships? Maybe the rest I'll ask a little bit later after you answer this one.
Yeah, I guess people are wondering, is your embassy open to give out the visas because of the pandemic?
Yes, we do have a big problem, sir, with crew change and things like that.
Right.
I just want to hear from the ambassador if, how has this impacted the deployment, because one of our biggest employers really are Danish ship owners.
Companies, yeah.
No, I can tell you we are open for business. I can reassure you. But yes, of course, that when suddenly everything closed down in March last year, it caught everybody off guard. And of course, it caused huge problems for the shipping industry and for the people that either could not come to their ships or could not get off the ships that they had been on for such a long time. So that was one of the first priorities of the Danish government, that was to see we have to keep crew change going. So very rapidly, they set up a system whereby crew change could take place by way of Denmark. I mean, although Philippine seafarers, and we estimate that some 10,000 Filipino seafarers are on board Danish ships employed by Danish ship owners. We mentioned Maersk, but of course there are many other Danish ship owners also.
Right.
So the Ship Owner Association of Denmark and the government agreed that something has to be done so that we can keep crew change happening, and also that we make Denmark then a special port for the crew change, which normally can take place anywhere in the world. It's just a Danish ship that if it's a Filipino seafarer, but he or she could board in any other port than a Danish caller port. So that was the first thing, to make sure that these things could happen. And as soon as we opened up our embassy again, because we, of course, like everybody else, were busy evacuating Danes and then trying to figure out how we would do things. But one of the first things that we got back on track was actually the handling of seafarer visas. Many other visas, it was simply impossible because borders are closed and so forth. So from June, we were back on track with processing seafarer visas. And we are, if we look at Danish embassies globally, this embassy is by far the embassy that processed most seafarer visas last year. I mean, we are on a general basis, but last year, also because the Philippine authorities were super cooperative in making the exemptions that were needed for their people to travel to the ship. So we had a very fine cooperation with Marina to find the necessary flexibility to make this happen. It has also meant that we have had really, sometimes work comes like the ketchup bottle effect, because then we had to process a lot of visa for a group of people going to a ship, right? So it comes in bulks, and then we're working like this. We always make sure that we prioritize the seafarer visa, so we make sure that the seafarers can get to their ships. And I think by and large, we have had a very fine cooperation with the ship owners that also have done their part, having people quarantined so they were clear, doing the test. And that's why it has to be like this. Because once you're clear, you need to go, you need to find your ship wherever it is and so forth. So the logistics of it are huge. So we know that when that application comes, we have to be speedy in processing it. And by and large, it has worked very fine. Also at one stage, it was about a chartered plane that should take out the seafarers. Normally they go by commercial airlines, but here we needed a chartered plane. And we also, with fine cooperation with your authorities, we're able to get the landing permission and everything else that goes in with taking down a plane and getting it out again. So I can only say it's been a very smooth cooperation, and we have done everything we can to make sure that the seafarers could get to their ships and could get back in again.
That's very interesting. Carmela, do you have some more?
Yes. Another is the supposed or alleged non-acceptance of Sinovac in Europe. This was based on what some of the mining companies here in the Philippines are saying. Sinovac is being given here in the Philippines, especially among mining agencies. Would you know if these shipping companies from Denmark will be providing a list of your allowed vaccines to the mining agencies representing them here in the country?
I'm not sure that I have a complete answer to your question, but I have not heard that it should be a problem, if I understand your question correctly, that it has been said, no, you have been vaccinated by Sinovac, and that is not accepted. I have not heard that should be the case, actually. I think we also just at the beginning at a new challenge, which is people have been vaccinated. What kind of document do they have for their vaccination? What kind of access to the world does that give them, by the way? If a Dane has been fully vaccinated, can he and she then claim, I want to go everywhere in the world because now I'm vaccinated? So I think we are just starting with the next challenges, which are, how do we coordinate the various types of vaccines, the documents that we provide as proof of full vaccination and so forth. But I know that vaccination is also at the top of the list for the ship owners. They are doing very much to assure that staff is being vaccinated also.
I heard that in your country that you're using this mobile application, a sort of like a vaccine passport. Is that on trial, or is it rolled out, or how does that work? Is it only for Danish citizens, or are you also requiring foreigners working there or visiting to register to that application? It's quite interesting because it's something that we could use here as well.
Yeah, I'll come back to what I said at the beginning, that we have a very well-functioning public healthcare system, which means there's only one portal. So we also do that, if I can say, in peacetime. If I just have been going to my doctor for a normal examination and I'm waiting for a result or the comment of the doctor, it's that same platform where I will go and get my result. So if I've been doing some kind of other test or whatever, I always log into, it's called Health DK. And we all know that we log in with our personal number and then we get the results. So when we have been doing COVID tests, we would get our results in that public platform, all of us. And now that people have been vaccinated, they can so when I have been traveling, I have been downloading the result of my COVID tests from that platform, and I could print it out and I could show it at the airport, right? And now that people have been vaccinated, it's the same thing. That COVID passport is available on that platform. And that platform is for all people that are residing legally in Denmark. So also if you're a foreigner and living in Denmark, you access that same platform, because if you're a foreigner and residing in Denmark, then you become part of the health system, right? And for example, diplomatic personnel in Denmark will also be under that same platform.
Right.
So,
how did you address the privacy concerns? Because here in the Philippines, one of the stumbling blocks is, government looking into your data, or did you do something different, or just the Danish people are just more trusting of their government than we are?
No. I mean, we have very, very strict rules on that. And for example, when we are processing visas, and the consular cases that we are doing, so these principles apply in a very strict way. But it's only me and the relevant health personnel that can see what is on my platform. Nobody else can access it. And then, of course, it's about trust in digital systems. But it has been one of the strengths for Denmark in our fighting the virus, that we are a very digitalized country. It has helped us a lot with everything that we are doing. And this health platform has really been good.
My last question, and it's very important. One of the biggest issue here in the Philippine maritime sector is the impending result of the EMSA report about the Philippines. The European Maritime Safety Agency, it's a European Union agency charged with reducing the risk of maritime accident, maritime pollution. Very important for the Philippines. What will the Danish shipping companies stand? What will be the stand of the Danish shipping companies on EMSA, just in case there will be a negative result for the Philippines? Will they change the Filipino officers on board, considering Danish ship owners are one of the biggest employers of the Filipinos? Thank you.
In the first place, we have not seen the report yet. It has not reached the national level yet, but so it will be a decision that will be made only by the fall, when we know the report. I know that it was finalized February, March. And then it will be a decision that we have to follow, whatever the decision is. So it's not a voluntary thing when we come to that, because it's within what we are doing as EU. So let's hope that the findings are such and the possibilities are such that we can continue cooperating in the way that we have been cooperating. And anyway, everything that is in force already and running, those contracts will keep running. But it is very important for maritime safety that standards are high. We know how much traffic we see in international waters. We know how big these ships are. We can just, I don't know if it was an accident or what happened, but we had this ship blocking the Suez Canal for how long? And it didn't cost lives, but in worse situation, it can cost human lives. It can mean ecological disasters. So we simply need very, very high standards for the international shipping. And that's, of course, what these EMSA reports, which is not only about the Philippines, but about any country that provides sailors, is about. And also, we have very high standards for the Danish ships. It has always, and most Danish ships sail under the Danish flag and adhere to that strict control also.
It's interesting, Ambassador. You mentioned, let me circle back a little bit. You mentioned that you guys, or the embassy is fairly new, but the embassy had been here before.
Yeah.
Right? And then it returned. But what brought you back? I mean, I guess the question has to do with where does the Philippines figure in your in your foreign policy, or maybe even to a greater extent, where does ASEAN fall in the Danish foreign policy?
Yeah. Ideally, I can tell you, as a civil servant and with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for so long, we would wish to be everywhere. Right. Like the big countries, we look at them and they have embassies everywhere, and we are, let's face it, slightly envious, because that is the best way to work together. That is when we have representatives. So we are also very, very happy that we could open up here again, and the Philippines opened in Denmark. There is no doubt that this region, the whole ASEAN region, is of great interest, because it is a driver of much what will be going on, and we also, of course, looking strategically at it, as would the Philippines be, as to where you open or close your embassies. I think most countries that open up here are very aware also of the economic potential of this country. I mean, the growth rates have been very impressive for a number of years, and of course, COVID is making a dent in that. And the wave that we are in right now is, unfortunately, if we look at the latest news, it is that expectations are being downgraded again. But even so, it's still impressive growth that this country has. It's a growing population. It's a high population. So there are commercial aspects to it. It's an important region if we look at it politically. We're just talking Indo-Pacific. And then, of course, we also have the people aspects, the many Philippines that work on Danish ship or on Danish soil. And the other way around, we actually have quite a number of Danes that live in the Philippines. So that is something that we have seen growing, and then we react to it. We have Filipinos all over the Danish kingdom. I don't know if you know, but there are some 200 Filipinos living in Nuuk in Greenland.
Wow.
And in the Faroe Islands as well.
One of them was our former editor. Unfortunately, she got married to a Danish fellow, and she's happily living in Copenhagen now.
Yes, but that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well,
and I don't.
So, but
no, of course for you. But then with globalization, I mean, you have these global nomads. They plug in wherever, and then they work from there.
You mentioned Greenland. So is it definitive? It's not for sale to the United States?
It's not for sale. But that caused a small problem when that sales offer or buyer's offer came out. And they, I don't know if you know that 2 years ago, Lucky Blanco released a film called Nuuk. Which takes place in Greenland with Angie Dixon in one of the leading roles.
Interesting! I should see that.
Yeah, well, we should send you a link, and it aired. We aired it at the Danish Film Festival here. A very good film, actually. And he had just been to the Faroe Islands, completing another film, which will be released on Netflix in August or September, I think. So we have a very good cooperation. So that is the beauty of this diplomatic work or international relations, is that they pop up where you maybe did not think of it.
That is very interesting.
So always be prepared for the possibilities that are there.
How would you like Filipinos to think of Denmark, or when Filipinos think about Denmark, what images would you like them to see in their mind's eye? What would be the impressions that we should have?
Yeah, I would like you to think of us as a very stable democracy, which has functioned very well for us, and we have a consensus-based democracy, because we have an array of political parties, even if we're a small country. We very seldom have a prime minister who has a majority. And on one hand, that can, of course, sometimes slow down processes. But on the other hand, as I said, we have a consensus-based ruled country. And I think it's very, very healthy for any democratic process that you cannot just push through with all your agendas without having to listening to what the other half says. Then it's a country with almost no corruption. We come out on top for the last 10 years, on top of the transparency list, the anti-corruption list, very often sharing with New Zealand. And it also reflects, other than that, we have by and large trustworthy civil servants, which I would like to say I'm one of them. But that high level of trust that I talked about before, which gives an ease in the way of doing things. We also very often asked, how come you are the happiest people in the world? Right now, we are not. Right now, it's Finland. But we also tend to top those lists, and a critic could very easily say, but why? You have terrible weather and you have very high taxes. So why on earth are you happy? But it's also about a high level of trust in society, that you trust your leaders, you trust your neighbor, you trust that the decisions that are made to combat COVID are actually the right ones. You trust that you can go to the hospital if you're sick, and you trust that you can get your education. Higher education is for free in Denmark also. So you don't pay for your higher education. And that means that we have a very egalitarian society also, because it's not only the ones that can pay for it that can get a higher education and push through. It's actually everybody that has the capability and the wish to do so. So the American dream can to a very high extent come true in Denmark, I would say. And then, of course, a green and sustainable, a country with a green and sustainable agenda, and then a country that truly believes in international cooperation, bilateral, multilateral, through the organizations that we are a member of. We truly believe that it's a rule-based order that will that should govern the globe.
Well, how is the Philippines perceived in Denmark? I know when most Europeans think of Southeast Asia, Thailand comes to mind, because I suppose that's a more popular tourist destination. I don't know if my impression sometimes is that we're not known enough in Europe. I don't know if that's the case in Denmark.
I actually think that you're right in the sense that you're not known enough. If we speak tourism, definitely Thailand has been very sharp at marketing themselves as a country, but also many other countries. But it's not like the Philippines has not made it in the mind of the Danes, and I can vouch for that, because when we had to evacuate Danes last year and get them home, when COVID broke out and everybody was asked to leave wherever they were and to return, and most countries where they were also seeing the benefit of people leaving, then we came out. We kept coming out on top of the list of where do we have most Danes stranded. Also because of course there were more Danes stranded in Spain, but they could more easily get home on their own. But it was just amazing how we kept coming out on top, and we actually ended up chartering a plane to take home Danes after 2 weeks down the line in that conflict. We had a chartered plane that went here in Manila and Cebu to pick up stranded Danes, and we had quite a number of Norwegians and Swedes and Finns and entering that plane also. So, so it is definitely being seen as a new tourist destination, and of course that has been set back by what has been happening. It's also a difficulty that there are no direct airlines. It always makes it more difficult if you have to touch down somewhere along the road. But I mean, if you have charter companies, then they will come directly. I'm sure that the Philippines as a tourist destination will come back. This is a beautiful, beautiful country. So people will start coming back, but it will take time. We know that. And of course, you as a country know it more than any, because your tourism industry is suffering the way it is suffering. Of course, Danes are aware, or Europeans maybe, that you have a special history that you're a Christian country out here in the middle of a region where there are many other predominant religions. The history of it, which is this year that Magellan arrived here.
Circumnavigated, yes.
And then, of course, we have, as I said, we have many more interpersonal relations now than we had 50 years ago. The globalization has taken us there, with the Philippines working on the Danish ships, but also working mainly in the service sector in Denmark. And then you see what is happening. People start marrying across nationalities and so forth. And the Philippines, the Filipino as a group, as I see it, are always very strong where they go. So we know that the Philippine society in Copenhagen is very strong because they stick together and help each other. And they are seen as a positive element. It's a group that integrates, that is helpful and service-minded, and so I would only see that our relations will be growing, and that we have quite many things that we will see in common. As I said, when we talked about the green development, you're also going in that direction. So, and with the strategies that we're developing also within the EU, we will go in the direction of more cooperation. That's definitely what we want.
Well, I hope this will be, the beginning of an even deeper relationship between Denmark and the Philippines. Ambassador, thank you for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to mention? Maybe there's something we haven't asked. I'll leave you with the final word.
I think we have pretty much covered what we wanted to talk about. So I really wish to thank you for having this opportunity to meet, since it has been a very weird situation for me, because normally you arrive in a new country and then you start building up, meeting people. And I just arrived here, and then the world turned upside down. And then we have been finding our ways in communicating in other ways. But it's definitely great to be able to talk about the Danish-Philippine relations. And every time we talk about it, we also take a step towards doing something about it. For the people who are listening in or will be reading the interviews, we are open, and we very much hope that we this way can stimulate the interest for the Danish-Philippine relations also. And yes, things have been very complicated with the COVID, and it will take some time, but we're still there, and we're still in business, both for the visas. For those that can travel, there are still some restrictions. I have to say, it's not like it's suddenly all open, but definitely for the commercial, for the seafarers, and also businesses are still working. We know that they don't give up easily. So we are continuing the work that we're doing.
Ambassador, thank you very much, and please keep us posted on things that happen in your country, in your embassy.
Yeah. Thank you very much.